Your bulletins make great fans. Sorry. Teacher, do you not care that we are perishing? I love that this is how the disciples wake Jesus up in our gospel story today. They don't say, "Excuse me, Jesus, could you help us?" And they don't say, "Jesus, wake up, there's a storm." They do a very human thing, don't they? They want their teacher, their leader, the person in charge to show a little urgency in an emergency. It seems to me this is their primary frustration. It's not just that they're afraid of the storm. They're afraid that Jesus doesn't even care. I mean, he is sleeping on the job. Teacher, do you not care that we are perishing? How often have we done this? In our own storms, our own life struggles, we call out to God, "Are you even there?" We want healing, we want relief, we want the current situation to be resolved, but the real frustration sometimes, the real trigger, is the real fear that the horrible thing is happening to me, to my family, to my country, to those I love. Maybe God's asleep on the job. Because the alternative is almost as untenable, that God is active and aware and loves us beyond our understanding, and still we must be in the storm. We can say to others, "It's okay, God's with you," but when it's us in the boat, rocked and unseated by the waves, with the cold wind and rain hitting our face, we don't just want God with us, we want God to show some urgency in fixing the situation. Perhaps this is what Paul's getting at in his letter in the Corinthians today. After all, this following Jesus thing he's doing, on the surface, it doesn't look like the way to an easy life. The list he gives, let's see, we have beatings, imprisonments, riots, labors, sleepless nights, and hunger, and those aren't hypotheticals. That's actually what he's experiencing. That's what being the church in Corinth is perhaps fearful of if they fully embrace this new way of being. I'm a pretty lucky lady. I'm not intimately familiar with beatings or imprisonments, but I've seen riots. I've had labors, sleepless nights, and hunger. Those are things I know. Anxiety, depression, despair, those are things we know. If we as a church made our list, it would be long. Grief, financial stress, physical, mental suffering, fear, estrangement, loss. And then Paul says, isn't it great? We are servants of God, and we have commended ourselves in every way. God is with us in all of these things. We practice purity, knowledge, patience, kindness, holiness of spirit, genuine love, truthful speech, and the power of God. How easily Paul throws that last item in. You know, we practice the power of God. God is that accessible. God's strength and care and love are that tangible to Paul. God is in the boat with us. We can reach out and touch him. Paul says we do so by opening our hearts. It is interesting to me that the disciples use the word perishing when they call out to Jesus. Don't you care that we are perishing? Because it's both true and not true. They are not at that moment anything but alive. They are in danger, but they do not know the future. They may or may not be in mortal danger, but it's true to them. The fear and suffering they are feeling is as if they are dying. I've been there. Haven't you? I've been in so much physical pain, I felt as if I were perishing. I have felt such anguish, I've wished I were perishing. Have pity on me, O Lord, see the misery I suffer. Paul says that those who follow Jesus are dying and yet are alive, have nothing and yet possess everything. So how do we get from here to there? How do we get from wondering if God is even awake with us in our suffering to reaching out and holding God's hand in the boat? How do we live in this world where we suffer and die and yet are alive? Peace, be still. That's how Jesus responds. He awakens to a storm around him, to his disciples demanding urgency from him, and he stands up and rebukes the wind with the opposite of urgency. Peace, he says, be still. And then after the calm, he turns to his disciples and says, why are you afraid? We talk about resilience in lots of different ways in society right now. It's kind of a buzzword. What our children need, we are told, is resilience. What we need to get through the stress, the burnout, the pressure of work and life, well, you just need some resilience. If someone shows signs of weakness, of an inability to cope, we sort of shake our heads and say, well, just need a little more resilience. This way of talking makes it sound as if resilience is a cloak of protection, a shield, a thing we have or don't have, a thing we are born with or without, a thing we are responsible for maintaining in our own power. It sounds more like a barrier we put up between ourselves and the storm, something we place in between ourselves and others, ourselves and the world. The book I've offered to the church for a summer book club is called Weathering the Storm, Simple Strategies for Being Peaceful and Prepared, and I promise it's a coincidence that today is our first discussion after church on this Sunday about storms and suffering. The author offers two primary insights around resilience. One is that resilience isn't an absence of stress. It isn't never having stormy weather. It's peace within the storm. It's having a core of faith that you'll get through the storm one way or another. It's quieting the winds within you, peace, be still, and trusting that the storm around you will calm too. Maybe we won't ever get to taking a nap in a boat in the middle of a hurricane level of calm, but we can reach out and touch the one who is always peace. Be still and know that I am God. The other insight is that resilience isn't static. It's not something you have or don't have, something you're good at or not good at. Resilience grows with time, with experience, with practice, with surviving the thing you didn't think you could survive, with planting seeds of practice, of stillness, of peacefulness. In book club today, we'll talk about intentionally building connections and community with others, about practicing noticing the goodness even in the hard times. I think these practices are part of what Paul means when he says to open our hearts, to open ourselves to others, to open ourselves to the silver linings of goodness in the stressful seasons. It's an act of trust, of faith, of vulnerability. It's the opposite of closing off behind a barrier or a shield. Rather than putting something between ourselves and the storm, it's opening up to the life we're living, which includes storms, and to those around us, and God with and within us. I am so sorry for your storms. I know how many of us are in the thick of it right now because I know you, and I don't need to know you to know we're all in some storms. But dear ones, may the God of peace, who passes all understanding, keep your hearts and minds on the knowledge and love of God, even, especially, in the storms which surround us. Peace, be still. Amen.